Okay.
Here we are in Arizona. And it's been great. It's been really wonderful. I had kind of intended to have a whole bunch of people here, but I realized that after the experience of the last 3 days and all the joy and all the talking and jitter jabbering that we wouldn't even be able to hear ourselves. I mean, this is a really talkative and really energetic group here. And so it's been a wonderful event. Ron Gibson is finishing up his land patent seminar today. And I did my principal speaking yesterday for a meeting of the Arizona Assembly. Arizona Assembly, of course, hosted this whole event, but we had people from all over the United States here. We had people from Delaware. We had people from Texas, California, Nevada, Michigan, Louisiana. I mean, it was well attended and it was from all over. So although the members of the Arizona Assembly were more populous, there were plenty of people from everywhere here. And it was really very heartwarming and humbling to come here and see how many people are getting the message, are understanding it, and who are following up on it for their own sakes and the sake of the country. And so I have been treated very, very well. I'm sitting here, I've been awfully well fed. And I've had a couple of almost, well, surprises that I would not ever have imagined. I mean, they gave me a bus.
That's fantastic.
To be able to travel around in comfort from place to place and visit the other assemblies. And if you think about that, what a blessing and what a money saver for everybody concerned, and what a convenience for us to be able to travel around and visit with the assemblies. And well, anyway, it's a gorgeous motorhome. And you can imagine my amazement. I was just kind of, that's me. And of course, Harold, my XO, was here, and he takes over. He looks at the photographs. He thinks about it for about, maybe a minute or two, slack-jawed moments. And then almost immediately, he was planning our trip itinerary.
And just for clarification, Harold is your executive officer.
Yes. And he's here with me helping set up everything and making sure that things like the computer work. And anyway, so he's the itinerary guy. And I was amazed that after he picked his jaw up off the floor, he was immediately plotting out how we were going to have an itinerary going across the northern states this spring and summer, and then looping down along the eastern seaboard, and then heading back to the western states on the southern side of the trek in the winter. And so, I mean, he's already gung-ho and ready for it. All this, of course, had developed out of a late night Facebook conversation years ago with Shirley. And we wanted to do, and what we still want to do, is a kind of a tour America. In fact, this is being billed as the America Coming Home Tour.
Nice.
And so what we wanted to do is basically a vaudeville show, or a variety show,
Mm-hmm.
and just roll into these little towns and put out our shingle and talk to people and give them a fun, entertaining, family-oriented evening entertainment that would allow them to come in and get the history of their country and feel really good about their country
Right.
and come away with the information that they need to be able to claim their correct political status. And so Shirley and I were kind of brainstorming about that years ago, and here she shows up with a bus, the first bus.
That's so fantastic.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, she's been just amazing. She's been just a fireball. I don't, you know, so much energy has been spent the last 4 or 5 days. I mean, she did everything from, setting up the arrangements to making sure the food was delivered. And I mean, just worked her tail off for 4 days here. And I'm sure it was in planning a lot longer than that, but I'm just very humbling effort on the part of Shirley and the Arizona Assembly. Dennis was great. He came and he was the master of ceremonies yesterday. And it was just wonderful. It was a great event and a wonderful experience for all of us, I'm sure. So
I'm sure.
Anyway, yay for Arizona.
Yay.
And thank you. Thank you all, because it was a very humbling experience to realize how much work they had done already and the sacrifices they had made to make a bus possible so that we could go spelunking from one state to the next.
That's so exciting. And yay, Arizona. Congratulations on all of your efforts.
Yeah.
And God bless you, Shirley and Dennis.
Yes, they did. They did a bang-em-up job here. And I'm really looking forward to the opportunity of being able to go. It may take us a while to get an actual show up and rolling, but that is the intention. And in the meantime, we can use the bus to go from assembly to assembly.
Which is fantastic. I mean, I know Washington would love to have you come and visit, but so would every other state, because we all love and respect you so much for all of your work and all of your efforts that you and your team and your family have done. And it's just an honor to be in the same place with you.
Well, everybody treated me like I was the queen of the crop, I guess. I couldn't complain at all. I hope I treated them the same way.
I am sure, Anna, you have such a great heart.
So we got through the speaking presentation, and it was already kind of pre-set that it was going to be about the birth certificate.
Okay.
And sort of an introduction to the whole topic for the public, as well as, to go over the fine points with people that were already familiar with it.
So it was an open public meeting?
It was.
Oh, nice.
And it was basically an educational meeting. And then afterward, we had time for question and answer and a barbecue type picnic type dinner for everybody.
Fun.
Yeah, and so I got a chance to talk with the audience at the dinner, and afterward we were up until about 9:30 at the same reception room, and just fielded an awful lot of questions. And lots of interest, lots of people getting their paper done. People understanding that they're not giving up anything.
That's huge.
Yeah, I think
that's huge.
Yeah, it is. I mean, for some reason, they assume that if they surrender U.S. citizenship, that they're giving up something of value. They don't understand that at the very dawn of their life, as a tiny baby, they had a higher and more fortuitous political status than U.S. citizenship could ever begin to be.
Right.
And so now they're beginning to realize that it's important to claim that back and to get it on the record so that there's no doubt about it later on, and you can always refer back to that public record and say, see.
Yep, exactly. And so many people think too that they have to give up their Social Security, they have to give up their VA benefits or their pensions
Or their licenses to practice some profession. And that's not
exactly.
true. That's not true. You're just changing the footing that you have with respect to the government. And so we dealt with a lot of those questions too, you know. And one man was especially impressive. He was an executive for a technological company, very well educated, very well spoken, very nice guy. He had been born in Pakistan and had emigrated here in the 80s.
Hmm.
And, you know, he walked right up to me. He said, you know, I see what you're doing. It makes sense to me. If it were just me, I'd be all for it. But I have concern for my family, for my wife and her mother, who are my dependents, right? And it tore at my heart because I could see how much he believed in the American dream and how much he wanted to be part of it. But I also understood his concern that an action of his could endanger his family in some way.
Absolutely.
And, you know, it was at that point that I realized, oh my, some of these people think that by giving up US citizenship and accepting state citizenship, that they're going to be losing something or they're going to be losing protection.
Right.
When in fact, it's just the opposite. You're gaining protection. You are then standing under the guarantees of the Constitution. You're no longer subjecting yourself to any kind of false citizenship claim.
Right.
And, you know, and so I explained the advantages of American citizenship versus US citizenship. And I explained how getting your claim on American state citizenship or American national status on the record now actually creates court admissible evidence of your political status if and when that becomes an issue later.
Mm-hmm.
It's like
Right.
insurance in the bank.
Yeah.
And so,
And I think that's a really good point because even amongst our coordinators, you know, who have spouses, the coordinator may have corrected their political status, but the spouse is still hesitant to do so for some reason. And so, you know, I think the more that we can help people understand that it gives them more protection.
right, it does. It gives them more power, it gives them more protection, it gives them more choices and prerogatives. And best of all, it gives them private property rights that they don't have otherwise.
Right.
I mean, I ask people, well, do you think you own your house? Did you pay off your mortgage? Well, what if it wasn't your mortgage? Huh? What if what you did was pay off a mortgage that was owed by the state of state corporation, and now they own your house free and clear? What? And what if that state of state organization goes bankrupt and all of its presumed assets, including its franchisees, get sucked into that bankruptcy? What if they take your bought and paid for house out from underneath you as belonging to the state of state? What if your house is sold again for the debts of the state of California? Hello?
Yeah, even though they've already paid the mortgage or in their mind, right?
Right. Right. And that's happening all over the country. People are getting notices of tax liens and bills and stuff that they do not owe, not by any stretch. And yet they're being hounded by these private bill collectors. It's crazy.
Well, and on top of that, what you've discovered is that it isn't really a mortgage after all.
Right.
It's
It's not.
something, it's something called a lease purchase tenancy agreement.
Right. It's a future contract. And so it's invalid from the get-go. It's a future lease purchase agreement is what it is in technical terms. And the, the debt that's owed on it is a debt of the state government. It's not any kind of debt to you when you walk in and authorize your own credit. So that whole crazy system has to be completely renovated, and the issues have got to be brought forward. And it can only be done by people acting in their own true political status as Americans. It can't be done by US citizens.
Well, because they're part of the corporation, and it has to be someone who is an actual beneficiary.
Or donor is what we
Donor.
are. Presumed donor. And so we have
And
to
holder in due course.
We are the donor in their scheme of things, but we're not knowing donors, right?
Mm-hmm.
All this was done by deceit and fraud against babies in their cradles.
Right. Now, the corporations, though, both of them, the territorial and the municipal, are in bankruptcy.
That is my understanding. The municipal bankruptcy started in 2015, and they're trying to close it out here shortly. Meanwhile, the USA Inc. Just missed a payment February 14th or 15th. Anyway, so they are in default, and the US corporation is in final stages of a Title VII involuntary bankruptcy. And so that puts both of them on the ropes.
And the Chapter 7 is liquidation.
Yes, it's involuntary liquidation. So they are definitely on the ropes and going down the tubes. But as they do, then all of their debts they will try to, the trustees of that bankruptcy will try to pass all their debts off onto the purported securities. All of those municipal citizens that aren't really municipal citizens. All the people who are Americans, in fact, and who were never made aware of any claim that they were municipal citizens will be getting tax bills. And it will not be a happy story if we can't get this straightened out, and if people don't have their correct political status established before this all comes down on top of their heads. Of course, we're going to be there pitching and fighting, and you know, we're going to be right there telling the truth about this whole matter and what was done here. But people have got to wake up. They have to get prepared. They have to get their ducks in order, and they have to stand tall and stand together, because otherwise these European bounders are going to try to foist off another round of their excessive, they're just crazy debt spending on us.
At least those who have not corrected their political status.
Well, they'll try even against us, but they won't have the reputation. The rebuttal will already be on the public record.
Okay.
So, and we're looking for a systemic cure to this, obviously.
Yes, of course. And you have been working very diligently on that for years now.
Well, yeah, and now it's gotten down to the point of shaming them and exposing them for what they've done to their erstwhile allies and, the people that had trusted them to fulfill their obligations under the constitutions.
Mm-hmm.
And basically what they've done is they've purposely and with malice aforethought colluded together to evade their constitutional obligations. And depending on how you interpret that, that can be thought of as treason or it can be thought of as commercial crime. However, it is a crime in both cases. And the specific unlawful conversions that they've engineered have resulted in the securitization of living flesh in bondage without any due notice, without any agreement, which is slavery.
Mm-hmm.
All these things, these grotesque evils have been promoted, and they have been addressed against us by our employees.
Mm-hmm.
And I suppose that's the part that really grinds my whist, is that here I am paying these people, and my employees are seeking to entrap me, are seeking to misidentify me, are seeking to mischaracterize me, are trying to get their paws on my assets, and they're trying to use my credit for their benefit and saddle me with their debt when they're not even making a good faith effort to do their jobs.
Right.
So yes, I'm highly incensed, and I hope other Americans will be when they realize the extent to which our employees have hornswoggled us.
And this was a result of the 1933 FDR move, Proclamation 2039.
Well, it actually started before that. It started with the territorial government substituting a Scottish corporation for our government and calling this Scottish corporation the United States of America Incorporated, infringing on our copyrights and our identity, and, basically foisting itself off as the government. And they literally did infringe on our good name and on our copyrights and on our trademarks and everything else. And the only way they got away with it is that they assassinated Lincoln and they destroyed records. And then they just sat mum and hoped that nobody would notice. Well, it took some decades, but we did notice. And the fraud goes all the way back to 1860 for sure. So I have sympathy with Karen Hoods when she says, oh, well, we'd be blasted back to the Dark Ages if you consider 1860 to be the Dark Ages. But nonetheless, we have to face facts. The fraud has been ongoing since 1860, and generations of Americans have been pillaged, plundered, enslaved, deprived, misidentified, mischaracterized. And although we are third parties, non-combatants have nothing to do with the quote-unquote civil war that they are continuing to fight without our permission on our shores. We've been mistaken for the enemy, and we've been treated as the enemy, and we've had our goods and our assets and our populace conscripted by these evildoers, and the entire thing needs to be scrapped all the way back, and reparations need to be made, and remedy needs to be provided by the evildoers and the wrongdoers in this entire story, which is the British monarch and the Pope.
Absolutely. And more and more people are waking up to these facts.
Oh, yeah. I think Joe's hamburger stand kind of got to them, They could see the transaction, Here you are. You've got an IOU called the Federal Reserve Note, as in promissory note. And here you have a real hamburger. So, they finally saw that there was no way for there to be a debt accumulated, but that the credit was not being credited to Joe, the hamburger guy, right? So, I think we've had a means, a little story that's easy for everybody to grasp that demonstrates that our national credit is due and owing, and it simply hasn't been credited to us.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that's where you created the Sign in America program so that we would be able to access the prepaid credit that we are owed through a
Right.
mutual offset credit exchange program.
Right. Yeah, we have what is called a mutual offset credit exchange exemption. And when you claim your exemption, you're basically saying, I'm sorry, I'm an American. Doesn't apply to me. I'm claiming my exemption from this, and then they have to apply the credit to zero out the account, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we were never told anything about this. We were not told that we had an exemption. We were not told that how we could access that exemption. And now we've been stuck going back through the bill collectors, the IRS, right,
Mm-hmm.
to straighten this out, because one side of the IRS is holding the CUSIP account, and the other side is holding the AutoTrust account, and never the twain shall meet. So we've had just this ongoing struggle with them to get them to honor our exemptions. And then when they honor them, they change their office location, or they decide that they're going to do some new administrative process, or they decide that they have to have a direct statement from the vendor before they can offset the account, and they just make it unduly, unnecessarily complicated, and it just takes forever to get any satisfaction out of these people. So going directly, this was part of what I was going to talk about with the trustees. See, when you go into bankruptcy, what happens is that the bankruptcy court takes over and appoints trustees to oversee the bankruptcy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like the United States bankruptcy, the corporation has been in receivership to what? United States trustees, right?
Okay.
Okay, so we come and we are seeking an exemption from taxes claimed against us erroneously by the United States corporation. And instead of it going directly to the United States corporation, what happens in the bankruptcy scenario is that we get sent to the US trustees. And the US trustees are sitting there going, where does this fit?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, who's who and what's what in this big world. And they're operating on a basis of collecting for the territorial government, right?
Okay.
So in any case, they're not looking to give us any remedy. They're looking to collect on behalf of the territorial government. Whereas we are owed the exemption from the territorial government as well as the municipal government.
Right.
Anyway, so because of the bankruptcies and because of the layers of government involved here, it gets harder and harder to cut through all this BS
Mm-hmm.
and to actually exercise the exemption and get the offset that we're due.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we have been started doing is the credit collection letter. And the idea behind this is that, okay, you send us a debt collection letter and we send you a credit collection letter, and that makes it completely clear what each party is doing and for how much, and expedites that whole conundrum so that we're no longer going through the US trustees and the bankruptcy and all of that foo-for-rah, or, you know, expecting the IRS to handle that. We're going directly to the vicar generals, who are the municipal officers responsible for this mess. And we're going to the inspector generals of the different departments and agencies. And we are serving notice on the politicians. But just the sending these things to the vicar generals seems to get an awful lot done. We've had long-standing cases where credit cards have been paid off within 3 days. They've
Wow.
they've been up for mutual offset credit exchange for 3 years, and all of a sudden, boom, in 3 days after it hits the inspector general and the vicar general's desk, it gets cleared off. We had one man who had a court case in which he had been attacked and defrauded and assessed various kinds of punishments, and his case was dismissed in 3 days.
Wow.
So these things can go rather fast if you get them to the right desk.
Yeah, that's always the challenge, is getting to the right authority, right?
Right. Well, and we weren't wrong in what we were doing. We were sending it to the right authority prior to the bankruptcy, right? But when the bankruptcy took over, well, then it became the U.S. trustees' business, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're just bypassing that and going to the organization that chartered the bankrupt corporation.
Oh, okay. And then many people ask, well, I've been looking for the bankruptcy case number or information on the bankruptcy, and they haven't been able to locate it.
That's because they do it by treaty.
Oh. Treaty between which authorities?
They're representing governments, right?
Well, they're what would you call it? They're
Substituting.
Yeah.
Substituting themselves for real governments.
Yeah.
But real governments do these things by treaty.
Huh.
So they've been signing as representatives of us. And these things are accomplished at all those G20 meetings.
Oh, I see.
So it's done by treaty. For example, the bankruptcy in 1930 was declared at the Geneva Conventions, and the G5 nations all declared bankruptcy together at the May 1930 G5 meeting, which was called the Geneva Conventions then. And so that's the way they do it. It doesn't show up as a bank. It's not a bankruptcy like we would go through if we were corporations. It's a bankruptcy by treaty.
Gotcha.
And they just sign on to the treaty, and a whole bunch of nations go bankrupt all at once.
Huh. Interesting. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and then they throw it back on the poor people that are supposedly stuck and have to pay for whatever extravagances the lobbyists in their particular capital deemed was expedient for their purposes.
Right.
So that's why you can't find it as a bankruptcy in a court.
Yes.
Per se.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then
now, go ahead.
Well, anyway, so you have the U.S. trustees, right?
Mm-hmm.
And today I made another announcement about other trustees, right?
Right.
So there are all of these trusts that are the assets that underlie the central banks worldwide.
Mm-hmm.
And it's gold, silver, platinum, blah, blah, blah. A lot of that gold, silver, and other mineral wealth came from the Spanish armadas and inquisitional efforts and the Spanish gold hoards that came out of the conquest of South America.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, an awful lot of that is very old. It's been around for centuries, and it is vaulted and stored away, and all the different banks have got it as a off-ledger asset that's backing their day-to-day extensions of credit.
Huh.
Anyway, there are numerous different accounts. A lot of them were old family trusts,
mm-hmm.
and a lot of them are called the Alpha and Omega accounts.
Right. Right.
Then we had the spiritual white boy accounts, and we had all these other things, right?
Right.
Well, the principal party that finally gained control of all that was a man named Julius what was it? Divina
Gracia?
Garcia. Thanks to
Gracias?
God.
Yeah.
It means thanks to God. Okay. So anyway, we happen to have him here in our country, and he has sought our protection from the true government, and he has become a state national. He has
Fantastic.
he completed that process, and he's a wonderful man. And he has all of the background, he has all of the information, all of the records, everything. And today I find out that some Filipino is pretending to be him and has gone to Shanghai. Yeah, has gone to Shanghai and is pretending to be him and claiming that he has the ability to open the Alpha and Omega accounts when he's not even the right Julius, right? He's not even the right ethnicity.
Oh, gosh.
I mean, you know, it's preposterous, and yet people are taking this seriously.
Right. Now, why Shanghai?
Because that's where they're doing they're working on all of the actual assets as opposed to the credit assets.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So the faker shows up.
The faker shows up, does some magic tricks, doesn't have any of the stuff that he needs to show that he's the actual person. And meanwhile, the US government has been keeping the real guy stuck here in the States, unable to get a passport or go anywhere or show anybody the actual information. So I believe it's just another one of their little cuckoo bird nest maneuvers where they're trying to substitute one of their flunkies for the actual fact, the same way that they substituted their United States of America Incorporated for the unincorporated government and basically did a switcheroo amounting to an identity theft. Mm-hmm. Same kind of thing, same MO. Anyway, so I hear about this today. I tell him, he says, that's it. I am removing the trustees. So the US is no longer a trustee, and the Rothschilds are no longer a trustee.
Fantastic.
And then I followed up, and since the Filipinos are involved in this, I followed up and informed them that if they don't get this mess straightened out and get their Filipino fakir back on Philippine soil and out of my hair, that as of March 3rd at 12 midnight GMT, they are no longer going to be acting as our trustees either.
Wow, that's huge news.
Well, and that's an honor they've had since 1934. But if they don't stop jerking around and collaborating with the evildoers, then I'm sorry. They just won't be our trustees. We'll appoint new trustees.
Absolutely. Wow, that's huge news.
Well, it's overdue in my opinion. They've been jerking and jumping and carrying on and you know, messing around with things for the last, 65 years?
Mm-hmm.
So they've got a deadline. They better meet it.
Fantastic. Well, there you go. Yeah, so, and you just published an article about this today, this afternoon. Will the real Julius Divina Gracias please stand up?
Right.
Okay, fantastic.
Right. Well, and you know, when I was told this, I was challenged on it. And they were saying, oh, you don't know who this person is. Oh, yes, I do know who this person is. And, well, you know, let's have a showdown. And, you know, you bring your boy and we'll bring ours. Well, okay. I'm ready. Somebody's going to be showing up. I don't care. Let's go. I'm your Huckleberry.
Oh,
Now,
the games these guys play.
well, and as much money and power is at stake, you can see why they do it.
Mm.
But the fact is that it is just another grotesque fraud that they're trying to work, just as they worked the Scottish interloper, just as they worked the church nonprofit in 1925, just as they've done all the way along the line. Identity theft, credit card hacking, just one unconscionable, stupid, evil Ponzi game and fraud game, carny show, flip-flop, shell game that you can imagine. So we're looking at another one, but I think it's very important that everybody understand that the Rothschilds are no longer trustees of those accounts because of their own bad actions, incompetence, and breach of trust. And the US government and their trustees are no longer trustees of those accounts as a result of the same bad action, incompetence, and breach of trust. And as far as we're concerned, the Philippine government has been acting as a trustee of our gold since 1934. And if this is the best they can do, they're out of a job as of the 3rd of this month. And it's been published, and it's been sent to the Pope, and it's been sent to President Trump.
Very good. Now, who is the new trustee for Julius Divina Gracias?
That will be announced.
Okay.
And it will be announced as to who the new trustee for us is if they don't get their act together by the 3rd midnight GMT.
Okay. Very good. That's amazing news.
Well, it's long overdue news. We should have done it a long time ago, but you know, as long as there's some semblance of people doing their jobs and in good faith, you don't want to embarrass them or make them look bad when they can simply correct. But we've had so many instances where they have acted in self-interest, in bad faith, where they've endangered the trust, they've endangered the assets, they've promoted attacks against the actual employers and donors. It's time. They need to be held to account under the law and by the actual donors of these trusts, acting against the misappropriation of funds, credit, and everything else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, isn't this whole false flag, worldwide false flag about the coronavirus, isn't that breach of trust?
Oh, absolutely. That's just plain old fashioned criminality.
Mm-hmm.
That is nothing but criminality. And after a considerable amount of digging and a whole bunch of pointing of fingers, it turns out that both the virus and the vaccine are owned by the Queen.
Oh, the Queen, the Brits again.
The Brits again. It's always the Brits. Take it to the bank. Don't even stop to sniff around. Nobody else on the planet is going to be guilty except the Brits. And they're either going to be working for the Queen, or they're going to be working for Westminster, or they're going to be working for the Pope. And you can always just track it right back to those same 3 sources and one group of people being used to do all this evil worldwide, all the time, every year, every decade, every century. And I think it's about time that we all just recognize that and put our flat little feet down.
Absolutely. This is ridiculous. It has to stop.
Well, what they've done is they've weaponized this virus to be extremely infectious. And so its actual effect all by itself is a bad flu.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a strain like influenza is a strain of the flu, right?
Right.
And it has very similar symptoms of a bad flu that in about 5% of the cases turns into a bad pneumonia. And it destroys lung tissue and it destroys the immune system just like traditional pneumonia does, okay? So we're not dealing with any superbug in the sense of something that does something incredibly different than what flu already does. We're just dealing with a more infectious agent, okay? And there have been a few reported cases of hemorrhagic fever in China, but that's a whole different deal. And that comes from different vectors. It comes from different sources. So that's much more localized and not likely to become part of any kind of spread of coronavirus. Coronavirus is causing flu, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm familiar with influenza. That isn't to downplay the fact that influenza is a very serious illness if it goes bad. I mean, most of us have had influenza multiple times in our lives, and we survive it.
Right.
And it's just a matter of being in shape. I mean, obviously, people who are very elderly, people whose health is compromised by other issues like, heart disease or cancer or diabetes, or who are very young, small children, are more at risk than healthy adults. But at the same time, something else is going on, and that is the 5G rollout. And it turns out that electromagnetic radiation causes sickness symptoms just like flu.
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically impossible to tell if a person is suffering from EM radiation sickness or they're dealing with some variety of flu.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So when you combine the two, you can get an entire population presenting symptoms, and you don't know whether it's flu or whether it's electromagnetic radiation sickness.
Gotcha. Because they both look similar.
They look similar. And
but then when you combine them, you get a
word system? You probably do, yes. The business of 5G you can defend against in a number of ways. And we've discussed those. I mean, there are gadgets that modulate radiation and turn it from being harmful to being healthful.
Mm-hmm.
There are gadgets that protect from spikes in electrical fields, and which create what are called Faraday fields around electrical fields,
Mm-hmm.
that basically scatter the impact of radiation. And there are actual substances that have the same effect. So we're all free to go out and take action to protect ourselves from electromagnetic radiation and ill effects from that. We can all turn off the telephone. We can all take measures to safeguard ourselves in our homes and in our, from the use of appliances, all sorts of things that can be done. And in fact, I would argue that the electric companies and the microwave companies and the communication companies and the Google and Facebook and all the other tech giants that actually benefit from using our airwaves and from using electromagnetic energy to broadcast and use their products should be made responsible for modulating the EM field at the source so that we don't have these problems.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I mean, it's a tiny expense for them, but when it's affecting the public health and in the public interest, they should be taxed.
Yes.
And I don't mean taxed in a way that they can just pass on to their consumers.
Right.
So, another thing that we can do is we can basically use our existing laws, our antitrust and anti-monopoly laws, to punish these corporations that do things that are against the public health and against the public interest.
That makes so much sense.
The hard part, as I discussed in the article today, is the first line of defense is supposed to be the Pope, because he has the absolute authority to liquidate any corporation on the planet that's caught involved in criminal activity, which at this point there are quite a few.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and he should be liquidating them right and left, but they're his best buddies. They're, contributing to the coffers. They're, schmoozing and woozing just like they always do. And so you are seeing that the Roman Curia and the Pope are not taking action to liquidate these corporations, even though they're doing horrific things like Monsanto and, all of the things that are coming at us now, the coronavirus, that's a corporate product. So there, like I said, there's no dearth of targets if he were to do his job, but we're going to have to twist him into 6 ways of Sunday to force him to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other line of defense is to exercise the existing laws against antitrust and anti-monopoly and those things. But it's hard to get the legislature to back up their own words. And it's hard to get the legal establishment moving in the right direction because, of course, they're being paid off by all these same big corporate operators.
Right.
And, sad to say, the only power that the voters have, unless they get organized and really thump on it, comes once every 4 years at the ballot box. And that's not good enough.
No.
So we're left with option number 3. And that is what we're preserving and pursuing right now is self-governance, taking on the responsibility of self-governance and then exercising that self-governance to destroy corporations that are technically chartered under our delegated authority.
Very good.
And you will notice that in this latest Peter Pence scandal, where they collected a special donation from all the Catholic churches that was supposed to go into a fund for the Pope for the relief of victims of war and disease and political oppression. And instead they collected it and used it to invest in, luxury condos and Hollywood movies. And the only excuse they could come up with was, well, you gave us all this money and we would be irresponsible not to invest it, as if there were any dearth of victims of war and political oppression and disease in the world, right?
Right.
Well, they use the same kind of interlocutory logic, if you can call it that, to excuse other things too. And, they constantly throw it back in our face that it's our government and our delegated authority. And if we don't like it, why aren't we doing something about it? Well, now we're doing something about it.
That seems just, it's crazy.
Right. It's breach of trust.
Yeah. And so all the more reason why we have to get busy and correct our political status and join our assembly and take our government back.
Well, not just our government, because Terry, you see, this is affecting the entire world.
Yeah.
96%, I believe, 92 or 96% of all lawsuits on earth are filed in the US.
Wow. That's an interesting statistic.
By far, most of the patents are issued through the US. So, what's been happening, if you watch that report that I published, the Vimeo report, where we're talking about the evils of corporations and about Kinetics, the Queen's interest in the corporation that developed the coronavirus and the vaccine for it.
Right.
Well, see there, it's reported, they give a very good explanation of something that I've known about for at least a couple of years. And that is that they have been abusing our delegated authority to run the patent office. And they've been sitting there like spiders so that whenever anybody comes in and makes an application for a patent, they steal the information.
Every time, huh?
Well, anything that they can use, anything that they see a potential for making money off of, the British Crown Corporation is sitting there in the shadows like, evil Uncle Ernie, ready to snatch anything that they can snatch and then, patent it or copyright it or trademark it or all three for their benefit using our infrastructure so that it makes it look like we're the guilty parties.
Wow.
So that's another reason why we absolutely have to put a stop to this, because it's not just affecting us, it's affecting everybody.
Yeah. Well, and so is the coronavirus. I mean, it's creating a planetary lockdown, which is...
And it's stupid because the virus in and of itself is not any big whoop.
Right.
I mean, what they're doing, so 2% die from the coronavirus. 2% of those infected on average are dying of the coronavirus or less. But let's give it the benefit of 2% as a worst case scenario dying of the coronavirus. Well, think about it, do the math. If you've got 1 million people, 10% is 100,000, right?
Right.
So 6% is 60,000.
Mm-hmm.
And 2% would be 20,000 people out of a million will die of the coronavirus.
It's a lot of people.
It's a lot of people, but it's less than some strains of influenza that we've already fought off, right?
Right. I mean, 70,000 Americans die from the flu. Yeah.
Every year.
Every year.
And so say that 20,000 people per million die.
Okay.
And 11 million people in the city of Wuhan, China.
Wow.
So, you're looking at 220,000 people killed by the virus.
Mm-hmm.
Well, of course, you're going to have crematoriums going full bore day and night to deal with that, many people dying.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're talking about giant-sized cities and you start doing the math, you realize why that is. And you also realize why it is we get reports from Wuhan saying, we don't know anybody who's missing or dead as a result of any kind of virus. Because it's really, even though it's a lot of people, it's really a small percentage of the population.
Got it.
So maybe 50 people and 25 of them are sick, they have the virus, and of that, none of them die.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And that's what we're seeing.
Yeah.
But, people see these reports and these ghastly images of bodies stacked up for the crematorium and they think, oh, it's the end of the world. Everybody's dying. But no, it's just that you've got 11 million people. And when you take 2% of 11 million people, it's still a lot of corpses that have to be dealt with.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we had the one death in Washington State.
Which idiot governor declared a state of emergency. Oh, weep, weep, I'm going to water.
Yeah.
I never heard such an idiot.
Yeah, he's an idiot.
How did anybody ever vote for him?
He's an Obama flunky.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Hopefully that explains it.
I want to tell everybody that one of the best things that I'm observing is that all of the people on welfare want to get off it.
Oh, that's fantastic.
I mean, if they don't absolutely need it for some reason, like, they have a debilitating illness or, something really valid, okay? Unless it's something really, really valid where they really do need public assistance, they don't want to be on welfare. They want to have lives. They don't want to be regulated. They don't want to have caseworkers snooping down their shorts. Okay, so they want to be off welfare they feel trapped by welfare.
Sure.
And so anybody with a brain who sees a better opportunity wants out.
Mm-hmm.
And that really just kicks the Democrats in the shorts.
Good.
Well, and people have regard for their neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
I've, in the course of my work, I talk with many, many people of all walks of life, all levels of economic prosperity or lack thereof. And some of the most intelligent, most passionate people are the ones that have the least.
Mm-hmm.
Because they've suffered.
Mm-hmm.
And they see the evils of this system. And they don't want to be part of it. They want something better. They want the American dream. And so you're seeing a lot of the traditional Democratic voters reevaluating what they've been supporting.
Right.
And especially as it comes, as more of the dirt, as more of the underbelly of the beast becomes exposed, then they see the voting records where they were talking one way and doing the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
They were talking about, all the glorious ideals of freedom for the poor, undertrodden, working class, blah, blah. And then they were actually voting to do things that were detrimental to the working class in order to keep those people coming back to them and voting for them and keeping them in power under the false assumption that their deeds were going to match their words.
Right. But this is true of both parties. I mean, the two-party system has got to go.
Well, you basically got two big lobbyist groups.
Right.
You've got one that's traditionally the lobbying group for the oppressed working class people, right? And then you've got the other side of the issue, and it's the pawns for big business. So you got a big business lobby, and you've got a lying through their teeth populist party, and they're both full of hogwash.
Mm-hmm.
They both have an incentive to keep their constituents hungry and unsatisfied, because that's what keeps putting them in power. And think about the stupidity of having lobbyist groups acting as your government to begin with. That's putting the pigs in charge of the trough. What do you expect to come of that?
No good.
Come on, folks, this is crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy.
What we should do is outlaw lobbyists.
That's what we should do. Yeah.
Just outlaw it. But if we did that at this moment, that would clear out Washington, D.C. entirely.
I don't see a problem with that.
I don't either, as long as we're ready to step in and take control and run the whole show by ourselves and just say, gee, Queenie, you did good in some regards, but you really screwed up in others. So anyway, this whole idea that we should be run in this country by political lobbies is ridiculous. Mm-hmm. And it always has been. Mm-hmm. And it was never meant to be that way. Ever. Yeah. We didn't have lobbyist groups like that. What we had for the first 70 years of our existence were certainly passionate interest groups that would be in favor or against some particular issue. But they weren't organized in any broad spectrum manner to represent sectors of the population. I mean, for example, you might have a group that was in favor of a treaty, right? And you might have a group that was opposed to that treaty. But this was just about that treaty. And in today's terms, we might have a group that's against smart meters. Mm-hmm. And we might have a group that's for smart meters, but it would just be about that issue. It wouldn't be some sort of all-encompassing, broad spectrum, right and left kind of dialogue in which you've got one group of self-interested, nasty robber barons on one side going, oh, yay, deregulate business, give business lots of tax cuts and let us do whatever we want and blah, 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 blah. And you against this other group that's poor mouthing and talking about the rights of the people and then under the table, undercutting everything.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and you can see how they both keep in power by keeping their constituencies unsatisfied.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And it's just time to stop that ridiculous madness. It serves no one except the people who are lining their pockets.
Right, exactly. It does not serve us. It does not serve the public interest. It does not serve the people of this country. It does not serve the resources of this country.
No. No.
So, time for us to do what we're doing, to take on the responsibility of self-government, to pick up our inheritance as Americans and trudge on.
Well,
And nobody can say a word about it because it is our right, unquestionably.
absolutely. And the assemblies are busy and working hard every day to bring that reality forward.
Bless their little pea-pecking hearts.
I know.
It just it does me so much good to know that there's such a number of really quality people that are putting pedal to the metal, who understand the issues, who understand what is at stake, and who are taking the time out and pushing and pulling and bringing it all into a form where you have support. I keep getting people asking me about all these different evils that are spewing out of the courts every day. Well, the obvious answer is you join your state assembly, you fill your own jury pool, you operate your own court, and you say, okay, well, we don't need you. You take care of your own people and your own problem. We're taking care of ours. This one is one of ours. Leave him alone. He's not your concern. He's not in your jurisdiction. So the easiest way to get rid of the corrupt courts is to build your own courts. Okay, that front and center. But the other issue there is that as you build your assembly, you become an active part of the Federation of States. You become an active supporter and director and mover and shaker in the international scene, where you get to tell the Queen how you want your delegated power exercised. You don't just leave it on autopilot for 50 years.
Exactly. And that's, or longer, right?
Or in our case, but I mean, the temptation is people who are lazy get into these positions and they rely upon these foreign governments to carry on operations for them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they aren't thinking in terms of holding on to their own power and exercising it appropriately.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of what we need to teach all of the state assemblies and the state assembly members, is to get that attitude. Hey, you're my employee.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I'll tell you, that's what gets my back in Iraq. That's how I decided. You know, I just look at these people, I shake my head and I go, okay, who's paying who here?
Mm-hmm.
Who's getting a check out of my pocket?
Right. Well, one of the most incredible things that really brought that home was when you did it's almost like Genesis about Evergreen and the subcontractor of the subcontractor of the subcontractor. And it's like, oh my God.
Yeah.
So many layers.
And at each layer, accountability is lost. Think about that.
It's
So
not a good situation.
No, now you have a corporation with 4,500 employees and only God knows how many planes of various kinds that doesn't have to file a flight plan because they're under the CIA umbrella, which should not exist. And then you've got them exercising basically these perks of a governmental authority that they shouldn't be exercising. And there's nobody there to tell them no. The
Right.
CIA looks at this and they go, oh, gee, well, we can make money from the Vatican spreading all these chemtrails, and that will just cause more fire, and then we'll get more money as firefighting planes.
Where's the moral thinking in any of this?
No, Terry, it's like this. If everything is allowed, nothing is sacred.
Yeah.
And that's the issue of abortion, too. If human life is not sacred, then nothing is sacred. And that's where morality goes out the window. That's where you lose your moral compass, is when there are no absolutes, where everything is ifsy, ansy, grazy, there'sy. Everything is quote unquote relative according to these beasts. And so is truth. According to them, truth is relative. You know, they could take this apple and they could say, well, that's a red fruit. And you would go, yeah, it's a red fruit. Oh, and it's a yellow fruit too, right? Uh-huh. And gradually they turn it around and they say, this is a Jonagold apple. And you go, okay, well, that's the name of the, cultivar that has been named and whatnot. You accept all this. And after a while, they say, this is a Jonagold. It ceases to be an apple, doesn't it?
All right. Becomes a derivative.
Yeah, and that's how they are doing this. They are relativizing everything. They are using words and descriptions to do this sleight of hand so that people don't have the mental capability to stand back and say, no, that's bullshit.
Yeah, exactly.
That's an apple. Hello. And so it's the same thing with employees. You've got a department of the government, right? You got a branch of the government, you got a department of the government, and underneath that department, you have agencies of the government, and then you have all of the agency subcontractors. So that in fact, the actual government that stands up above all of this isn't even engaged in the day-to-day operations, and nobody's being held accountable.
Right. Yeah, zero accountability.
And when you don't have accountability, when you don't have consequences for your actions,
Right.
then what's keeping you from doing the most outrageous and evil things?
Mm-hmm.
If the queen doesn't believe in God, which she doesn't, then there's nothing stopping her from doing whatever she wants, except for business contracts that already exist.
I think the difficulty for most people and even myself is that, so apparently this story broke because there was a drunk pilot spouting off his mouth, and the story about Evergreen. And so where are that pilot's morals and values? Because at the end of the day, his family, his children will be affected.
He will be affected.
He will be, yeah. And so how does this break down?
Well, self-interest. I need a
Yeah.
job.
I'm sure he's getting paid a lot.
And I'm just one little person. There's your other excuse. I can't do anything. I'm just one little cog in the wheel. I'm going to sit here on my pity potty and get drunk and feel bad about it, but there's really nothing I can do about it. So I'm just going to take my paycheck and spread the shit all over the skies. And that's the way they are. That's the way these men are. They have no idea that they have any power. They have no idea that they're responsible. They have no idea that they can say no to orders. They just go along like little ducklings. Oh, well, my boss, my CEO, my commanding officer, my, whatever, my authority figure told me that I have to take this can of crap out here and spread it all over creation and set it up for firebombing in days to come. And, who knows where I'll be when the firebomb hits.
Yeah. but I guess they're also not thinking that they are complicit in the crime.
Well, because the crime is undefined, Terry. I mean, if everything's all right, there is no crime.
In their
If there's
mind.
nobody, yeah, well, and if nobody's going to hold you accountable, there is no law,
I see.
right? And so if nobody's going to hold you accountable for doing this, and you can get paid, $250,000 every year plus pennies, and, as you're dumping this out the back of your airplane, and it's just making this little white puffy smoke out the back of your airplane, and you have no idea exactly what it is that you're spraying anyhow, or what effect it will have. I mean, these people are selfish, they're clueless, they're stupid to assume that they're not complicit. They're stupid to think that it's not going to affect them, because it is. But there are a lot of stupid people in the world. There are a lot of thoughtless people. There are a lot of indoctrinated people, a lot of brainwashed people. And they just follow along. I mean, I was following orders. What did we hear at Nuremberg? Over. I was just following orders. I didn't know that this was going to result in millions of people being murdered. I didn't know that this canister contained deadly gas. I didn't know that, my inaction was going to lead to the massacre of 50,000 people, because it's all compartmentalized.
Well, I want them all to know that the assemblies are rising and we're coming after you.
Yeah, the rest of us who have not lost our minds and are not rationalizing away our responsibilities are here. And the law does exist. And the law will be put back into action here very shortly. And, people that say that I'm not a judge, well, actually, I'm a justice. I'm a higher ranking official of the law than any judge. So here we go, kids. If you've had enough of all this relativism, and there are no absolutes, and truth isn't really truth, and this apple isn't really an apple, it's a John of Gold, okay? If you've had enough of this, if you're ready to cry, phooey, no, get busy. Take charge of your life. Take charge of your country. Take charge of your companies. Take charge of it all. It's your responsibility. There's nobody else out here but us chickens. So I guess that was kind of my message to the Arizona group that we spoke to yesterday. And instead of screaming, running into the bushes and tearing out their hair or being terrified, every single one of them understood what it was about and what was at stake. And they all manned up and toed toe.
Fantastic.
I mean, some of them were pretty sickened. Some of them were shocked. But they could see the truth of the matter. They could read the birth certificate.
Yeah, the evidence is there.
Yes, that's what a birth certificate is. It's evidence of crime.
Yeah, and the most recent information that you provided on the birth certificate is that we will no longer be seeing the municipal birth certificate, only the certificate of live birth.
That is what we're seeing. As the bankruptcy of the municipal entity comes to a grinding end, the state organizations that have been responsible for collecting these birth certificates are only issuing certificates of live birth.
So no more Form 56 is the result of that.
Right. If you write in to get a birth certificate and they send you a certificate of live birth, it most likely means that there isn't a birth certificate, that there is not a municipal birth certificate attached to you anymore.
Great. And so that's all they need, and they will authenticate that for their own records. And they don't need to do the Form 56 step. So one less piece of paper.
Actually, what is it? Three steps that we don't have to do. And actually, we're thinking about how to streamline this more, because we realized that immigrants have an easier route than we do.
If they're naturalized, right?
Right, if they're naturalized, or even if they are permanent resident aliens.
Okay. Same process. They don't need to do any of that.
Right. They don't need to do any of that. And actually, we're rethinking what we really bare bones need to reestablish control of the estate that's been purloined, and to establish our political status with no ifs, ands, or theirs left hanging.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to have kind of a real confab here soon, and see if we can cut out some steps, simplify some things. And also, we made a lot of strides on our IDs, passports, and those issues.
Oh, fantastic.
Max did come.
Oh, good. Good. Fantastic.
Yeah, so we have met face to face.
Oh, wow.
And then we also met with patriots,
Mm-hmm.
who are they're in favor of the cause of humanity in general. Okay.
Uh-huh.
So they are willing to help fund for the machinery and printing and all those things that go into the issuance of the passports and the
ID that we are owed.
yes.
Oh my goodness.
So between the ILBs becoming live,
Okay.
and the means of actually printing and making official passports and IDs, that's very good news.
Wow, that's fantastic. And so is there an agreement in place then on the ILB? Will we be seeing that soon?
We basically have had an understanding from the start. It was just a matter of getting it kind of memorialized and on, in a written form where we could look at it and say, yes, that's, we're agreed as to what this means.
Okay.
And yes, Max and his pal have their hearts in the right places and their minds centered on the right things. So yeah, there is agreement on the ILBs.
Okay, fantastic. And let's see, you're still working on the fixture lien, so we should probably see that soon as well, correct?
Well, I thought that I had sent you a copy of my fixture lien, and apparently I didn't.
Not yet.
And since I'm away from my desk in Anchorage for a while yet, and out of Alaska generally, it's kind of hard for me to lay my paws on it.
Gotcha.
But what I thought I might do is just go online and do one up so that it would be more obvious, what I was talking about. And you could just use that as kind of a general template to do I thought it was a very good idea to do it for men and women, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And, but if I give you one that's done properly, even if I have to gin one up in my head and send it to you, then you'll have that as a kind of a template or recipe that you can work from to make it happen.
Yeah, to make the template. And just understanding the female name change, because if you don't have a name change, it's a lot easier.
Yeah, well, and you can also, it depends a lot on what name you used as the record holder of the property.
Yes. Yeah, that's
You
true.
know?
Right.
So that's the consideration that you have as a woman, is that the whatever name the property is held in has an effect upon how you want to fixture lien it.
Right. Um, and we do have the other letters that you have already provided templates for, and that would be for the DNR and for the county official.
Right.
So those are ready to go.
And so we have the correction, we have the credit collection letter.
I haven't seen that yet.
Okay, well, that's also in the bailiwick, ready to go.
Gotcha.
I will be traveling tomorrow,
Mm-hmm.
but we should have those two things off and ready to you very soon.
Great.
And I know that there are people waiting with bated breath.
Yes. Yes. So folks, it's coming, I promise.
God willing, it'll be there soon.
Yeah.
And the creditor collection letter is being applied to a different level of government with great effect.
Great.
So
it sounds interesting. So.
And the other thing that we came up with this past week that people need to know, and I say we, and not me, but you know, readers, people that are working these different issues, is the lack of judicial warrants.
Okay.
In order to declare someone an incompetent, there has to be a judicial writ of commitment signed by a judge in a court of record. Since they don't have a court of record, they're not competent to do more than bluff.
Right. Right. That's the same situation that you were talking about with Able Danger, his
yeah, Field McConnell.
Yeah, Field McConnell.
Right. Yeah, they picked him up on a false warrant.
Yep.
And now they're trying to commit him as an incompetent so that they can administrate his estate and run over him.
Oh gosh.
And you know, you have to ask these questions, and you have to get them on the record and do whatever you need to do to make sure that they are placed on the record and not rescinded.
Yeah, absolutely. Very good. Well, a lot of good stuff coming out, and we still need to continue the donations so this great work can continue.
Well, we've had some buffeting the past couple of weeks. We've had some situations develop where, yes, we really do need funds. And they're funds that are going into things that run the gamut from just paying for basic bills because people have been thrown out of whatever income or work that they had, but they're still working for us. They're still doing their research. They're still, you know, working as court appointee witnesses to what's going on in their courts. They're still going to libraries. They're still going to museums. They're still digging up flying factoids that help us in our work. They're still making trips that they wouldn't otherwise have to make. And so we're helping them with their gas expenses. And in some cases, if they have to stay overnight, we're, you know, helping out with their hotels. There's a lot of things that go into this. And we've had 2 of our members down with just freak accidents.
I hope they're recovering well.
They are.
Good.
You know, in one case, we had some unfortunately painful accident results, you know, where our guy is still in a great deal of pain, but he is getting better.
Good.
And so it's taken some wind out of our sails in terms of what the living law firm could do. And it also slowed down our efforts with the bank a little bit. not as much because one of our guys is still hobbling around. But I got word just 3 days ago that one of our key players, one of our people that does an awful lot with the financial records for the United States of America, is going to have to undergo a valve replacement in the heart.
Wow.
And that's about a 6-month recovery overall.
Wow.
And it's about a week in the hospital. And he's not young. And so he and his wife are going to be suffering that. And even though they have insurance, it's never quite enough for, what you're really up against.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah, so we're hoping and praying for all of them to get better and stay better and get through and be back and ready to roar this summer.
Fantastic. Yeah, well, we continue to send love and prayers for their speedy recovery. And of course, everyone, please donate what you can, what you are able to. And if you can't send a donation, please send prayers.
Yes, everybody can send a prayer.
Absolutely. Well, we need to wrap up. And so do you have any parting words for us this week, Anna?
Well, just that this has been a wonderful event here in Arizona, and I'm grateful for everyone who was working on this to make it possible, and everybody who came, and I'm praying for everybody to get home safe again and take up the torch and continue to lead forward in their counties and their states. And I think we came out of here energized and ready to go, go, go.
That sounds fantastic, because I know everybody, all the coordinators are ready to go, 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 and they're pushing it forward every single day. So yay for the United States of America.
Yes. Be sure and say hello to all of the coordinators tonight on the call for me.
I will for sure.
There'll probably be a few that are reporting in on this event, so. Good.
Can't wait.
All right, dear.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Anna. Have a great week.
We'll see
you. Let's see. Today is the 1st, so we'll see you on March 9th back here on the webinar.
That's a very propitious day.
It is.
It is.
What is the propitiousness?
Well, it was the day in 1933 that Franklin Delano Roosevelt declared the bankruptcy.
Oh, wow. Well, we'll have a lot to talk about then, won't we?
Yeah, this week in history.
Well, good. I'll look forward to that.
Okay, dear.
Okay.
I'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Take good care.
Nighty-night.
Good night. Thanks, everybody. We are calling it a webinar. Thank you for joining us. We look forward to seeing you again on March 9th, Monday, March 9th, where we will be live again. This is our pre-recorded message, and Anna is coming live from Arizona. I'm in my usual spot in Falls City, Washington, and so I hope everyone has a fantastic week. We will see you here March 9th. Take care. God bless.